Hello and welcome back to Ladue Schools Today. I'm your host, Don Goble. Now, in her first year as superintendent of Ladue Schools, Dr. Donna Janke has talked a lot about our district's purpose, our why. And one of the primary goals she always talks about is ensuring all students are prepared and inspired to continue to learn beyond their years in our buildings. This is a process that begins long before students enter high school. However, in those final years in our district, students and their families have to make some pretty big decisions about what comes next. So to help them sort through those options and stay on track with the decision-making process, our students are incredibly fortunate to have two college and career advisors. And these two gentlemen are with us today to explain a little bit more about this process and what's involved. I'm delighted to welcome Ken Fox and Scott Cornwell to our studio.
Thanks, Don.
How are you guys today?
We're great.
Super.
Great.
Let's start by saying we feel fortunate to be able to work with the students.
Absolutely. It's a great relationship, right?
We have the privilege of working with great students and great staff and great parents, and it all comes together.
So let's just begin right there. Either one of you, just talk about the amount of students that are involved, and students and then families that are involved in the college and career process that you guys deal with on a yearly basis.
Sure. Well, in the high school, we've got somewhere between 12 and 1,300 students in any given year, roughly 300 to 325 per grade level. And so on one level, we simply split the grade levels alphabetically. I have the first half of the alphabet and Ken has the second half. We do focus our time of year on certain classes, and so even though there are perhaps 1,300 students in the high school, at any given time we're really focusing on individual grades, and so the fall really more so on some of the senior items. They're obviously more immediate, so Ken would have half of that and I had half of that, so about 160 students each in the fall that we're focused on.
Okay.
And then in the spring with the juniors, similar kinds of numbers. But the fact of the matter is we want to keep an open door policy in our office, and anybody who wants to walk in and talk about the college or about careers are more than welcome to do so.
Sure. So beyond the obvious graduation or college selection, what are some of the other milestones that you look forward to discuss with students as they prepare?
Well, as a student, our main purpose is to make sure that each student has his or her own individual plan. So that customization is what having two of us, makes sense. We like to, in those first 2 years, do everything we can to expand options. And so it's all about planning, and so they need a top-notch academic plan, and that's where we're very fortunate to work with the personal counselors who help with the scheduling and do all that. So putting together the best academic plan possible, and let me define that as students taking the most challenging courses that they can do well in. So that's academic planning. They need to expand options and create a good testing plan. So we're preparing them for some standardized testing that really starts in 10th grade, getting them exposed to that. So a testing plan, that's about keeping options open. Then there are other plans that need to come into place. There's a financial plan, because that's an important parameter, a college research plan, and a college application plan. And those last ones tend to start narrowing the process. The financial parameters and when students have figured out their own parameters, what's important to them, that tends to narrow. So think of the first 2 years as expanding the process, and the last 2 years as narrowing it.
Okay.
And we're coming up to May 1st when all of the seniors choose one college or one destination.
Right. And so then pooling all of that together, what about extracurriculars or athletics and involving that in the process too?
Yeah, I think this is taking a very oversimplified look at it, but I think that one of the goals of freshman year is, as Ken was suggesting, to really expand and explore and find out what extracurriculars, what outside of the school day time, how you want to spend that time.
Sure.
And for some kids, it's obviously athletics and their clubs and their student government, and then there are non-school related things, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, working through your church or your temple. So it's an even a greater community. So the freshman year, it's really about exploring and finding out what's out there and what you like. Sophomore year tends to be a time extracurricularly where you start making some choices. Colleges are often more interested in your depth of your extracurricular experience rather than necessarily the breadth. So being a member of 27 clubs doesn't really impress anyone because you can't have any impact if you're involved in 27
Right.
clubs. And so the sophomore year is the time to start making sometimes some difficult choices about which 2 or 3 or 4 are going to be the most significant for you. By junior year, you start moving towards more of a leadership role within those extracurriculars, and then senior year often are the leaders, the captains or the editors or what it may be. And that's where we are able to help you really determine what can separate you from other applicants when it comes to the extracurricular piece.
Sure. So undoubtedly, it can become a nerve-wracking process. It could be overwhelming. There's so many different factors, and Ken, you mentioned some of the processes and trying to narrow down your choices. So how do you guys then sit down and help that individual student narrow their choices, talk with the family to narrow once they start looking at some specific colleges or campuses?
Well, let's back up and say there is no recipe to this. And so it's the saying that we love is that this whole college thing, it's not it's a match to be made, not a prize to be won. So it's all about finding that match, and so for some, the academic components are very, very important. For others, the social part is a part where they learn. Athletics, as Scott said, plays a big role for others. Others are very interested in the arts, the theater and music and drama, and the fine arts. They all have roles. So we're about finding that individual plan for each student. We are a real data-driven office. We have, as you know, we have about 320 seniors each year. They apply to an average of 5 schools. So when we have 1,500, 1,600 applications per year, we've tracked every one of those over the last 12 years. So students we make available on the web through a tool called Family Connection, access to the history, Ladue's history of college student applications from Ladue to each of these colleges. How many students apply, how many were accepted, how many matriculated, and that's a very powerful tool. We like the idea of a student that's interested in University X. They can, from this website, determine of the students who applied there to X from Ladue, where else did they apply, and that helps them. So the narrowing is really about personal parameters, Don, and we coming up with each individual plan.
And it helps with the data to look at ACT scores and maybe applicable colleges there and
Sure.
grade point average, recommendations from their teachers, and having to coordinate all of that as well, right?
Yeah, by the time a student is a senior, they've amassed quite a story. And the goal is for us to help them be able to tell their stories to the colleges. And a typical college application has, the very basic biographic information. It has a copy of the transcript so that the colleges can understand their academic history. It will have an activities list so they'll understand the extracurricular activities. There's certainly a testing plan that Ken spoke about. We have a meeting with all sophomores talking about how to prepare your testing plan, and most of that testing takes place in the junior year, some in the senior year, and so we help send that off for them. And so there are a wide variety of pieces of the application that all come together, but it can't really come together until we're well into the fall of senior year because so much of the story has yet to be written up until that point.
We do need to plug the Ladue High School teachers because they combine to write about 400 recommendations for students.
Wow.
Which is quite a task, and those are very important for the colleges. The colleges are trying to figure out an academic community that they're trying to assemble, and that academics is the result of the transcript and the test scores and those teacher recommendations. And then the community part is everything else. And you just got to remember there's no recipe, for it. It's not just about high test scores or great grades or this club or that club, but it's how it all fits together.
What about any misconceptions, common misconceptions, myths that you guys deal with, or at least try to advise students to, stay away from this potential, pitfall, avoid that pitfall?
Well, I think I just hit on one of them was that there is no recipe.
Yeah,
to
okay.
it. If the minute you think that it's all about just, I've had this number of AP courses and I've got this GPA, sure, those things can be quantified, but those non-quantifiable things are just so important, and those are developed through your relationships with your teachers. The uniqueness of your extracurricular activities.
Right.
Yeah, the more selective the school, the more relationships matter, if I had to oversimplify it. And so it's not just about numbers. We have a lot of very strong students who have very good GPAs and very good test scores, but the most selective schools see a lot of students with really good grades and really good test scores, and so it's those other pieces. And I wish that there was sort of a secret to how one gets into those schools and that we could whisper that secret just to our students, but it really is a whole process.
Yeah. The other, we talked about another myth. People might think that it's about being well-rounded, and this is what Scott hit on earlier. Colleges want a well-rounded class, but that well-rounded class comes from having a bunch of lopsided students. If everybody's well-rounded, then it's pretty vanilla.
Sure. So we are only scratching the surface, but we are happy to talk about, at least at a high level, the process. Is there anything else you two would like to add today as it relates to the kids now who are getting close to graduation, or our juniors this year who will be coming to see you in the fall?
One of the things that I like to tell kids is that my job really isn't about helping you get into college, it's about helping you get out of college. And so it's not just about trying to get the right application for the right school at the right time. Certainly that's a piece of the process, but really it's a 4-year experience, and learning to read well and to understand what you read and analyze what you read and be able to then produce a piece of writing that explains what you've learned. That's the skill that's going to carry you through college, not your ACT score. So it's really much more about a process than about just completing the application in the senior year. And that's where I think Ladue is very fortunate, in that by having 2 of us who are devoted solely to the college and career advising, it allows us to have more resources to be able to spend with the students to begin that process earlier and to head towards the ultimate goal, which is to have those students have great choices in their senior year.
Right.
And I would conclude by saying what we said earlier. College is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. It's about helping each student find his or her own path towards the right place. They don't have to jump through our hoops. We just feel fortunate to be able to, in some ways, be the quarterback of a team that consists of the students and the parents and the teachers, helping them find that next step.
Well, it's an exciting time of the year to celebrate as students make their choices, and then graduation, and then you get back at it with next year's crew.
Exactly right.
Oh, we're
Always
back
a
at it.
cycle.
We're at
All
it
right.
right now.
Right.
Thank you both for coming in today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks very much, Don.
And thank you for watching Ladue Schools Today. We will return next month with more important news and information from around the Ladue School community. Until then, I'm Don Goble. Good night.